Hi, everybody. Josh here with Michelle, with Masando, and with a special guest today, Reverend Steve Rambo, who is the senior minister of the Simi Valley Center for Spiritual Living near my old stomping grounds there in Southern California. It's so good to see you, Steve, and thank you for your time today. And as we all know, we've had so much going on this past week, and of course, centuries before about questions of iniquity and racism and the death of George Floyd and the punch of the gut that is for so many of us. And Steve, if you don't mind me saying, just a couple of weeks before, you shared with me an article that you've been working on for the Science Mind magazine, which is the magazine that Centers for Spiritual Living puts out every month. That's hopefully going to be in the October issue, and it was on this topic of iniquity and race. And I thought we'd just begin by asking you to share a little bit about some of the points that you were talking about in your article, and just use that to talk about how we can apply our spiritual teachings to this issue of iniquity, of race, and of creating more of a world that works for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Josh. And thanks for inviting me to be a part of your community and to join in with the Mile High family. Michelle, it's good to see you. Masando as well. It's really cool to be with old friends. I've known you all for so many years. So, guys, you guys look great. You keep getting older, and I just love seeing it. It doesn't, except for Michelle, of course. And it's just really cool to watch. And to be a part of this. Yeah, so, it was really sweet to be invited by Science Mind magazine to create an article. I looked forward, you're 3 months ahead. So it was kind of prophetic in a way, and very strange to have that opportunity to write an article for this particular time. I looked forward, and I don't know if I shouldn't duck out of your screen while I'm here. Now I am going to have to go for glasses. So, we've got this thing, right, that we're all some of us are working with. And so I looked forward at what the various months ahead were. And as I did that, I was like, September, facing the fear. No, living as compassion conduits. Cosmic connections, October. Bingo. Because they break down that month into just like me, inextricably connected, bridge over troubled waters, and bridges that last. And each one of those topics spoke to this that I've been working with. I've been reading so many different things. This one's My Grandmother's Hands by Resma Menakem. Talks about racialized trauma, how it lands in the body. Another book I've been reading is, and I didn't plan this, I just happen to have these right next to me. This is Race in the Cosmos with Barbara Holmes. It talks about the new science of today and how it can be incorporated into this conversation around race. And so I was already loaded with that. And I have a partner who's from Holland who has been doing a lot of work on anti-racism, white privilege. And so we have these conversations at the dinner table. Our friends think we're like, what do you do for fun? Oh, well, we read books on anti-racism and social justice. And they go, yeah, I mean, really for fun. That was the answer to the question. So this is on our hearts on a regular basis, and as a result of that, the idea of how can we be cosmically connected just landed on my heart, because our teaching is all about oneness. And ever since I've been in the Science of Mind, it has puzzled me how many times we get the opportunity to bring that oneness into reality, starting with my earliest experiences of learning about this thing called RSI when I was in United. I'm like, what's that? Religious Science International? There's another one, and they practice oneness too? That's kind of not oneness. And so we've seen the journey that brought us in together from that experience. And that's been all about what I've been learning around how do we bring this oneness to every aspect of our lives, especially in this conversation around race in America and in the world. This is a world issue. It's not an accident that we have boat people in the Mediterranean getting turned around all the time. They're escaping the same kind of problems that we're experiencing here in our own country. So this is a worldwide phenomenon. And I'm excited that the United States has become the catalyst, a flashpoint. Not only have we spread blue jeans and Walkmans around the world, now we're spreading the possibility for complete social and interracial justice around the world. And that's powerful. So as I looked at this conversation, I'm thinking, what kind of bridges can we build? And I find that the Science of Mind is uniquely positioned to build these kind of bridges, because we have this idea that there's only one life. That life is God. That life is my life and your life right now. And Dr. Holmes, there's a wonderful story coming from Founders. I was born at Founders, raised at North Hollywood, born at Founders. And what I find is that this story that there was a time when Blacks at Founders were not purposely segregated, but unconsciously segregated into the balcony at the church. And Dr. Holmes stood in front of everyone and he said, "This can't be. People get to sit everywhere." There was another time when the Science of Mind magazine was segregating churches and practitioners in the listing of practitioners of churches in the magazine. Again, Dr. Holmes says, sorry, have you ever heard of something called alphabetizing? Alphabetize them, everybody, together as one. So this is in our history. This is part of who we are, to practice this area of oneness and to see our own communities fractured by some of these conversations, particularly after the last election, 2016, through a lot of communities, including my own, into turmoil. So we immediately went into teaching the spiritual principles and learning about white privilege, learning about the prison industrial social prison complex, learning about the pathway from prison, from education to prison, learning about the kinds of things that are happening in marginalized communities by marginalized people. And I don't like to even call it the dominant culture. I like to think of it as the domineering culture, the dominating culture, and that can be changed. And we can change that by practicing these various concepts of oneness that we talk about. The idea that unity is not lost by multiplicity, but is actually advanced by multiplicity and diversity. So that's kind of the start of what this article came out for me.
It's powerful. I mean, you used the words of our own founder, in your article, talking about it from the Declaration of Principles, where he says, we believe in the individualization of the spirit in us, and that all people are individualizations of the one spirit. And then Steve Rambo says, and the strainer to help filter our cosmic deep words that call us into deep conversation about race in America is also there in the Declaration when Holmes says, we believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete freedom from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. And you point out that this very work is in alignment with that very statement, isn't it?
Absolutely is. Absolutely is. And to bring all that into context, the article starts with the story of the two fishes, or the three fishes. The two buddies are hanging out together. The old fish swims by and he says, "Hey, how's the water?" And then the two look at each other like, "Huh?" And the old guy swims off and they go, "Water? What's that?" And so that was the start of the article for me, the idea that we don't really even understand. We can grow up people that do not have a tint in their skin, that do not have color in their skin, can grow up their entire lives and maybe never have to interchange with a Black person in America. It's quite easy for that to happen. And conversely, it's not as easy, but it can happen in all of our communities because there's still a lot of segregation in our country. So as a result of that, what I see happening is sometimes people think that because they believe that they're liberal, uh, don't judge people, uh, come from a perspective of everyone is equal, believe that that's actually reality. But in reality, that's not true. COVID is a perfect example of that. People will say COVID affects everybody the same. Not true. If you don't have access to good health care, if you live in a community where your income is based on going to work every single day, the kind of work that cannot be done from at home, you have to leave your house and you have to go to work and you have to be engaged with other people. There's a family here in Southern California. The father had to go to work. He came home. They're from Central America. There's 8 people living in the house. 6 of them are making a living for their family, and all 8 of them got sick because he came home and got everybody else sick. And so none of them are now working, and they're losing their home. But they didn't lose their home because people came up and supported them, right? But these kind of statements that are surfacely thought about, if we don't go a little deeper and dig into the depths of this cosmic sea and go to the lowest levels of it, we can never come to understand that these differences affect people, these samenesses affect people differently. And that's what I want to bring about a conversation around.
Well, and I love the analogy of the fish, because it tells us when we're talking about this issue that we're not just talking about fish, we're talking about the water. And in our teaching, we talk about, we call it collective consciousness or race consciousness. And, this is an issue about pointing fingers at fish and saying there's something wrong with you or something wrong with you. It's about how all of we collectively over the centuries have influenced the water, and that the water is serving some people more than others. And we all have a part about making the water good so that the fish can all swim as freely as possible. And, just one more quote from your article I'll share, and I know we want to get Michelle and Masando in on this too, but I just thought that they were such powerful words, Steve. You said, the opportunity before us as practicing religious scientists is to see the water in our sea, to examine how marginalized people of color, and you can include other aspects in this as well, are disadvantaged in our society, and to do something about it. It is an opportunity upon which we can capitalize for the benefit of the whole. We can change our talk, our naming, and in doing so, begin to change our lives and our culture. Rabbi Abraham Heschel said, God is hiding in the world. Our task is to let the divine emerge from our deeds.
It's a noble task. And the sweet thing about it is every class we take, every sermon we hear, every time someone in our community, our spiritual family opens up a Science magazine and reads a daily guide, they're dropping a little drop of that clearer water into consciousness. And we know, again, from Dr. Holmes, right? Focused thought is more powerful than unfocused thought. And so the idea behind looking into the ocean and seeing what is there is to see how we can focus our thought. And I do want to open the conversation. I just want to close with this one. It's Thich Nhat Hanh. No. It's the Tao. It's the Tao. I think it's chapter 15. Can you wait while the mud settles and the water's clear? Can you remain unmoving until right action arises by itself? We're looking at some seriously muddy, still struggling, just turbulent water. But if you let that water still and look into it, what arises is your reflection. So our opportunity is to look and see that our reflection comes up cleaner and clearer than it was before, not muddied and not soiled. And we can do that. I have faith in us to be able to do that.
Steve, I haven't had a chance to read the article yet, and I look forward to doing that. I have been reading some other things and really working to educate myself. And I love everything that you're saying and love everything I'm hearing from the article. And in the part that Josh just read, there's an opportunity for those of us who haven't had this experience of growing up Black in America or growing up Black in the world to say, what can I really do to support this group of people who have been marginalized? And because I think all these spiritual principles resonate for us. And I know that years ago I would have said, and I understand now this right now is not the time to say this, I would have said our teaching is colorblind, that we embrace all the examples you've given would have come out of my mouth also. But this isn't a time to be colorblind. This is a time to really see that there are disparities in our society and to be an active change agent, not only just in my spiritual beliefs and my spiritual passions, but what are some things that we can tell people and that we can do ourselves that can really help us to be an ally for this new world that is seeking to emerge?
Excellent question. So glad you asked that. You stepped into something that I am so passionate about. I stood in front of my congregation a month or two ago and said, I know, it just came over me. I just went like, look, don't any of you tell me that you don't see color. Mm-hmm. If you do, I want you to go to the grocery store tomorrow and just pick up the first grapefruit you see. You go to the store, you look at all of them, and you decide, I think I want this one. Difference matters, and it's important, right? The next thing that's important is our history in this country, my people's history in this country, has been to take care of the dominating culture. That's what we have done. We took care of the economy. We took care of the children. We took care of the home. We took care of the land. We built this country. A lot of us built this country, but we didn't get paid as much as everybody else did. Sometimes they getting paid. Most of the time we got paid nothing. So the really powerful thing that people can do that don't look like me is don't look for me to give you the answer of what to do. Get about the business of learning the answer for yourself. There are so many resources available now from people that have walked this path. People like Tim Wise, people like Barbara D'Angelo, people like Rizma that I mentioned just a minute ago. There are many articles, many books out there. Krista Tippett just had a wonderful interview with this guy, Rizma Minicam, just earlier today. So the resources are out there. So I think the thing that people can do, educate themselves and don't rely on your one black friend to say, hey, tell me what's going on. Tell me what to do. And I don't mean that in anything but from the kindest place in my heart. And then once you come from reading that material, your energy, as we know, people that have a good vibe, you can feel it. You're like, oh, I just love being around that person. They got such a good energy. Once you start educating yourself, you will have such an energy about you that the conversation will it will take on a new level. You'll go from elementary school to graduate school conversations on this topic that we're talking about from a place of personal awareness and education. And that's the same thing. That's why we focus on classes, right? We are a teaching. We're teaching philosophy. So it's about teaching yourself about the information. Yeah.
Great.
And,
Thank you very much.
Masando, I might ask you, I think that right now we've seen a lot of peaceful protests. We see a lot of tension. We see a lot of, people moving into, political divisions and old camps, all that kind of stuff. We see rage, we see hurt, we see love, we see all of it. How can folks who want to make a social difference, first this internal one that Steve was just talking about, but then people who want to, get out there and make a difference, how can they do so in alignment with our principles, in a healthy way, in an honest way? I know there may be a long multitude of answers, but I would just love to get your insights on that.
Yeah, I think just asking the question of ourselves of where are we being called to show up, right? To show up in solidarity. Where is our edge of comfort, and can we step just one step past that edge of comfort and for something greater than ourselves? That's actually like healing work. That's tapping into this oneness that we speak of, right? When we're recognizing like our own edges. And then seeking to find that edge and then take a step past that. We have to be true to our own way of going about this work, and we can't expect that we can be like have every single piece, right? So, but there's always small ways to do that. If you don't feel comfortable going to a protest, begin that internal investigation deeply with yourself, and to know that we've all been swimming in the water. We can look at how these show up in our families and how maybe we've been complicit in perpetuating stereotypes that are at the root of this collective consciousness that creates everything that we see. We can be willing to have these conversations in our workplaces and how this might show up in ways, and maybe we've been perpetuating that in our workplaces. We can look how it shows up in just daily interactions that we have, right? And like all of those little pieces matter, right? Like our personal, our interpersonal, and our collective, like these are all spheres of influence that we can, really just step into and play in, and to know that every time we do it, even if it's just one conversation with one person, or if it's a larger protest that we are standing in solidarity with, and then taking actions collectively with another group of people in order to create some specific systemic changes, those all matter, right? And they're all combating this influence of over years and years and years that we've really all been succumbed to. And every time we do something, we interrupt it, right? That's also a part of our teaching, right? We recognize that, like, personally, so much of the things that maybe have created suffering in our lives have come from this pattern of thinking and behavior that we've perpetuated over and over and over again. And when we start to do this spiritual work, we interrupt it, and then we replace it with a greater idea for ourselves and a greater idea for life. But that interruption is key, right? And until we kind of do that investigation work, which is why like often it takes doing a class or going to see a practitioner to even see that those patterns are there, because when we're in it, we're just in it. And we're like, I'm just doing life. I didn't even know this was here. But once we have some help to see it, right, then we can interrupt it and then create something new, right? And that's how our brain works too. These are all these patterns, right? And those patterns just get reinforced, and those crevices get deeper so that the water begins to flow, and we have to sort of like recognize that's there and begin to channel that water towards a new lane and a new way of being. So, you know, like, just be true to yourself, and know that there's so many different ways to address this big systemic issue that we're all talking about right now.
Well, Masando, that's beautiful, Michelle. Excellent. And what I also want to emphasize, and I think you're speaking around it as well, is there's the big call is for personal grace. You know, we didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to get away from it overnight. And there's no shame. There's no personal injury that you need to put, you know, we're not flogging ourselves over this stuff. And that's the other thing, you know, as you begin to wake up, stand in the joy and the celebration of waking up, and not in the pain and the anguish of, why didn't I get here sooner? Why did I not know this stuff? You didn't know it because you didn't know it. Okay. So, but you know it now. Thank you. And be grateful for that, because it's so easy. When your heart begins to break around these issues, it's so easy to go like, oh my God, why did I know this? How could I have let this be? Not the question. The question is, yay, you know it, and now you won't let it be anymore. That's the joy. Right?
Yeah. I've been trying to discern the difference between guilt and shame. As a natural reaction to waking up to some of this, and maybe ways that we have even participated unknowingly in perpetuating it. I think the guilt can be something that we experience, we feel, but then can move us to shift and change our actions, that actually can motivate us. Shame can be like something that like gets into our identity, you know, that I am a bad person. And we have to be able to discern those things, like as those feelings of discomfort come up as we're waking up to this stuff. Like, don't push it away, but also don't internalize it as part of your identity. Recognize and give yourself some grace. I love how you say that, Ram. Like, grace is such a deep part of this. Like, allow the grace of the divine to come in, so that you can feel that discomfort, but then just do something about it without having just to run away from it.
Yeah. And that's also, go ahead, Michelle.
I was just going to say that's really in alignment what you just said, Masando, with what I've been studying with Brené Brown. She talks about shame is exactly that. I'm a bad, horrible person, versus guilt is I made a mistake and I need to fix it. I need to maybe do something different. I need to behave different. I need to shift my thinking or my behavior. And so we have to distinguish the difference between the two of those. Yeah. Sorry, Steve.
In my experience, you know, I've run into, and I don't know if I'm sharing this from a personal experience or from white experience or whatever it is, but there's, you know, two big shared wounds that come up in our society that I've learned a lot about. You know, and the first is the feminine wound. You know, we see it in the news when we see you know, the systems that have oppressed women throughout society. And I've learned through my own conscious and unconscious actions how I've participated in that. And the other one is this, the racial wound or the inequity wound that's been in our country from its founding. And I think what I've learned to do is to realize, no, I'll never understand the experience from the feminine perspective, or from, you know, the many different ethnicities that have experienced discrimination in this country. But I think I can try to share the wound. You know, I can try to do that. And I've learned, you know, not to try to fix it, not to try and rush it, not to pretend that it's one day of work and be over it, but to realize it has to be part of my regular conscious practice. And sometimes if something's coming up for me, it may not even be my own. It may be the person's next to me. It may just be filtering that water and to stay conscious, because what I don't want to see, you know, we have these we'll just call them media moments, and they're horrific moments in our society that just reveal this gaping wound. But too many of us, when it's out of the headlines, we go back into the unconsciousness. We go back to swimming, realizing I can survive in this water and I don't need to make it any better. And so, my hope is that we can continue to find tools to, keep conscious. And, Steve, you mentioned the Tao, and, the Tao teaches us to be like water. It says it's the softest, most passive thing in the world, but it can change anything. It can move and transform mountains. And you've just got to keep conscious. You just got to keep doing that work.
Yeah, that's so true. And some of the easy things to do. I know Johanna and I have just invited 6 other couples to join together in a book study. And we're going to have just a small book study and work from that. And then the idea is for each of those couples will then go out and start another book study. So that'll be, 6 more with 10 other people in it, each one. That's 60. And you just keep doing that. And that's our commitment, because we're really about the business of personal education. But whatever, as Masando said, whatever your edge is, push that. We actually wanted to do it with just 2 couples. And the next thing you know, we had 6, and we're entertaining one more. So there may be 8 couples in that group. And that's just our call, and everyone will get their call. This has been, I just love this conversation. This is beautiful. And then the last thing that was coming to me is that I want to not lose sight of how different what's happening today is versus what was happening when I was a kid. I was thinking about those times I watched on TV. I was too young to participate, but I watched Bull Connor on TV, and I saw all those white National Guardsmen standing with their dogs against lines of Black people. And just this week, driving home from an appointment I had in West LA, I drove past 5 different demonstrations, and each one of them was a multi-ethnic, multi-generational experience that just, to see 150 millennials all on the corner simultaneously taking a knee every time the stoplight changed was just powerful, And so we've already had a shift. It's a cultural shift taking place, and so we just continue that movement. It's just lovely to watch and to participate in, and there's sadness in it too, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, everyone. Steve, just love you, your creativity, and just the enthusiasm you bring to our teachings. And so it's great to share this virtual time with you. And we'll have to get you on a physical visit to Mile High Church sometime soon.
That'd be great.
It'd be my honor. When they lift it, I'm there. I'm ready, and love you all. Masando, working with you is a pleasure. Josh, all the years, and Michelle, I just love seeing all of you guys. It's really great. Thank you.
Thank you. And Steve, what month is your article going to be in Science of Mind magazine?
It's scheduled for October.
Okay, great.
So they don't lock that down until July. So right now it's like, yeah, hopefully October.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's great to be with you today.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.